I started with my top 13 episodes from the black and white era, and this time I'm tackling the Barry Letts era. Number 13, Robot. I get why people say this is just a third Doctor story posing as a fourth Doctor story, but the regeneration scene happened at unit headquarters, so it had to be a continuation. And okay, the robot itself is an amazingly low budget costume, but that one character had more character development than most characters have in a whole series. Number 12, Frontier in Space. This serial is one of a few oddities during Pertwee's run, as it actually involved travelling to another location via the TARDIS. The alien makeup is actually pretty good and still holds up today, unlike some other species that came before and in some cases even afterwards. Sadly, this serial features the last appearance of Roger Delgado as he tragically died in a car accident just 3 months after Part 6 aired. And it's because of that we never did get a proper resolution between Pertwee's Doctor and Delgado's Master. Number 11, The Sea Devils. Another Pertwee story and another species is introduced to the Whoniverse. And you're probably going to hear me say that a lot during this list. Much like how humans and apes evolved from a common ancestor, the Silurians and the Sea Devils also share one. I know people quite like this serial and I can see why, but I do have a couple of problems with it. It's basically a retelling of Doctor Who and the Silurians, just now the Silurians are water based, and what is up with the name they gave this new species? The Sea Devils? It sounds like a cheap sci-fi movie from the 1950s. Number 10, The Mind of Evil. Despite the many plot holes of this serial, The Mind of Evil is an enjoyable serial if you're willing to switch your brain off. Anyway, the villain, if you can call it that, is an alien parasite which feeds on and extracts the evil impulses from somebody's brain. It's an intriguing idea and one they've gone back to countless times in Doctor Who, but if you want to see it played out to its full potential, I'd recommend watching the Red Dwarf episode Polymorph. Number 9, Death to the Daleks. This is a rather bog standard Dalek story as it shows them in a war with another species. But there are good points, such as Sarah Jane Smith. If you look at this serial as a character study for Sarah Jane, rather than a Dalek episode, you might just enjoy it more than if you looked at it the other way around. Although that may be the writer's fault for naming the Daleks in the serial's title. So here's a thought. Would this serial be better remembered if it was called something else? Because if you're going to call something Death to the Daleks, I'm expecting something that resembles a war movie where the Daleks are almost wiped from existence. Number 8, The Green Death. A serial with a message that is still an issue today and probably always will be. In case you hadn't guessed, pollution is bad. Sadly, the message was forced onto the viewer, and I just think maybe it would have had more of an impact if it was a subplot where maybe the Silurians were using the pollution to terraform the Earth back to its former state, when the Silurians were the dominant species. But let's face it, this serial is mainly known for the departure of Jo Grant, and it's probably the most touching farewell to a companion since the first Doctor said goodbye to Susan. As there's the happiness that Jo has found someone, but the sadness that she is actually leaving. Number 7, The Time Warrior. Not only was this the first story to feature Sarah Jane Smith and the Sontarans, it was also the first story to mention the name of the Doctor's home planet.
What is your native planet?
Gallifrey. I am a Time Lord.
The story is a simple one, which is always best when introducing a new companion. But unlike past companions who just stumble into the story, Sarah Jane has a purpose. She's investigating the disappearances of several of Britain's top scientists, and like most Doctor Who stories, the disappearance is down to time travel, as the scientists have been transported to the 12th century by a stranded Sontaran. This serial has everything needed for a good Doctor Who story. A historical setting? Check. An alien enemy? Check. A mystery to why something that shouldn't have happened? Check. The only thing that might hinder someone's enjoyment is the bad Sontaran makeup. But that's just a problem with TV shows and movies that are ahead of their time. Sometimes the technology to create the characters and settings just aren't capable to do so, whereas if this story was made today, the special effects would be outstanding. Number 6. Terror of the Autons. This story introduced several new elements to the Whoniverse, mainly Joe Grant and the Master. And this was the perfect introduction for the Master, as he uses another alien species to do his bidding, a trait we'll see the character use time and time again, even when he returned in the new series. But this is unlike any other story where another Time Lord is featured, as the Master is given a personal history with the Doctor. The serial ends with the Master getting away and the Doctor speculating that they'll probably meet again, which would have been a brilliant ending if the Master wasn't the villain in the next serial. And whilst I enjoyed the following serial, I can't help but think maybe the Master could have been a bigger threat if they built up his next appearance rather than waste it. Number 5. The Ambassadors of Death. Much like the Tomb of the Cybermen, this serial has the humans as the invading villains, although we only learn that through the episodes. So if you haven't seen it already, sorry for the spoiler. Basically, the story involves a group of astronauts endangering humanity after they make contact with an alien species. And to me, that seems like something that would happen in real life if an alien species were to make contact with us. As let's face it, the human race aren't exactly a well-adjusted unit. We're full of hate and exclude those that we judge not to be like us. So how do you think we would treat an intelligent species that are far more advanced than we are? Number 4. The Daemons. Once again, this story has all the key elements that made Jon Pertwee's run so enjoyable. Having the Master as the main villain? Check. An over-the-top side villain? Check. A quick ride in Bessie? Check. Appearances from several unit personnel? Check. And ending the serial on a typical cheesy note? Check. Plus, it also features the first and only time in which an episode ends with the Master being the one in danger. Usually that honour goes to the Doctor or his companion, but this story puts a villain in harm's way, and that's really quite ingenious, as the fans will want to tune in the next week to find out if the Master finally gets his comeuppance. Although if I was to have one criticism of the serial, it would be showing the rest of the world how us English used to have a tradition of Morris dancing. Number 3. Day of the Daleks. Now I believe this story may have been the first to really use time travel as a main plot point, but I might be wrong, and if I am, please correct me in the comment section below. But nevertheless, this story brings in some proper science fiction writing, as the Daleks are using time travel to mould the future into their own warped vision. The only problem I have with this serial is there is only a handful of villains present, which makes it obvious that the production suffered from a small budget. Number 2. Doctor Who and the Silurians. I just love the idea that humans are not the original intelligent life from Earth, and when you see some of the changes that are currently going on in the world, it does make you wonder if we're really that intelligent to begin with. Back to the story though, and this serial shows us how stupid we can be at times, as we're willing to believe that just because one or two beings from a certain ethnicity want to harm us, doesn't mean that everyone else from that ethnicity does too. And if anything, that message is more important today than it has ever been before. And number 1, the 3 Doctors. This was the first episode to feature the current Doctor and his past incarnations conversing and arguing with each other. And let's face it, when it comes to other multi-Doctor episodes, the chemistry between the Doctors just doesn't match up to the chemistry between Troughton and Pertwee. And okay, the antimatter blobs aren't exactly high-budget creations, but I'd argue they're allowed to look like that, as they come from a different universe where our laws of physics doesn't apply. So there it is, my top 13 episodes from the Barry Letts era. Do you agree with my choices? If not, why not comment below and tell me about your favourite episodes?